Sales doesn't need to be hard or overcomplicated. That's not my way of saying that sales is easy. Rather, I'm saying that you can have a successful career in sales if you develop a process and execute on it consistently. This channel is dedicated to what a sales process framework could look like and showcasing the different best and worst practices around the different steps of a sales process. The intention is to publish short, weekly videos that are easily digestible with clear action items that you can begin doing today. Welcome to Sunday Sales Staples. Today's topic covers the homework that you need to do before you begin prospecting. Prospecting is the first step in the sales process, and it's very similar to trying to get the attention of a bartender during Friday happy hour. The bar is probably slammed, and the bartender is busy talking to other patrons. You're being patient and waiting to order your margarita, but if the bartender doesn't notice you, then you're likely going to be sitting there sans cocktail for a little while longer. Now, this is a stretch analogy, so don't read too much into it. And I'm not saying that you need to be annoying or flashy or exuberant to get the attention of the busy bartender. Rather, what I'm saying is that you need to stand out from the crowd in order to get someone's attention. Okay, back to the topic. I know the term homework brings up memories of high school algebra while sitting at the kitchen table after dinner trying to figure out what is X in an equation. And this type of homework can be anxiety inducing, stressful, and frustrating. But the homework you need to do in sales isn't as boring and it's much more fun, I promise. Doing your homework prior to prospecting your potential customers means researching their company to determine which decision makers you need to target, what pains they encounter on a daily basis, and collecting any talking points that you can relate back to your product. Before we get into the do's and don'ts, let me share a story. Back in the mid 2010s, I worked alongside a mid-market account executive whose motto was pick up the phone and dial. Everything else is out of style and you'll miss your quota by a mile. That was their way of saying, I'm not going to be doing any homework. For the sake of keeping this individual anonymous, let's call him Thomas. Thomas's role was purely outbound sales, so he had to cold call and cold email his prospects on a daily basis. Now, Thomas made the most amount of calls on the team, and he was proud of it. He was logging an average of 120 calls per day, which was nearly double that of the number 2 dialer on the team. Unfortunately, his activity meant nothing because he wasn't converting his prospects into interested, qualified opportunities. All of this effort with little to show for it is extremely frustrating. After sitting with Thomas for a couple of hours shadowing his calls, I suggested doing research on his prospects instead of going in blindly, but he was adamant that taking 2 to 3 minutes to research a company was a waste of time. In some roles, Thomas might be right, and this could be an okay approach for transactional sales, but for a complex sales motion, it's not. I then sat down with a different account executive, let's call her Sarah, to shadow her cold call process. She didn't make a lot of calls every day, and her average was around 40. However, she had an amazing conversion from cold leads to qualified prospects. Her prospecting motion was completely opposite that of Thomas's. Sarah would dedicate the first hour or two every day to research her new leads. She would take notes on her prospects and enter these notes into Salesforce so that she could easily find the information when she needed it. As Sarah was making her cold calls or crafting her cold emails, she would use this information to make the conversations more personal and the emails more attention-grabbing. It shouldn't be surprising that Sarah was miles ahead of Thomas, and to her, the homework was effortless. When done right, homework can elevate the interactions you have with your prospects, but when ignored, it's like you're fishing with a $30 rod from Amazon. Yeah, you may catch a tiny fish here and there, but you won't snag that 500-pound tuna that will make all of your friends gasp in astonishment. This brings us to the do's and the don'ts. In my experience, here are some of the best practices when it comes to doing your homework, and you can start doing any of these today. First up is the company website. Companies love to talk about themselves, so be sure to check out their About Us section to learn what their mission, goals, and values are, and start to think about how your product or solution can relate to that. You should craft messaging that links what's on their website to the value propositions of your solution. Next up is news. If you've never heard of a prospect company or a decision maker before, hop onto Google, search the company name or the prospect's name, click into the news tab, and see what relevant information pops up. Did the company recently win an award? Was the prospect quoted in a news article within the last few months? Did the prospect publish their own study? Find little nuggets of information that you can sprinkle throughout your prospecting motion. Similar to the company and personal news, what news is there about the industry? Was there a new regulation implemented on these businesses? Are there new processes being executed by competitors? What is going on in their world, and how can you relate it back to your solution? Next up, tools. There are a number of sales tools out there which will help you through your prospecting, and I highly suggest you utilize them. There's RocketReach and Hunter.io, which can help you find the email addresses of your leads if you didn't already have them. There's ZoomInfo, which is a lead enhancement tool in case you didn't have the prospect's email or their phone number. There's LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which gives you insights into your prospects. Of course, there's Google, which we just talked about. And finally, there's social media. I'll go into social media and social selling in more depth in a different video, but I wanted to give you a brief overview here. We know that the big social media platform for professionals is LinkedIn. You can look up your prospects to see their previous work experiences, see if you have any mutual connections, and gain insight into their professional lives. But I encourage you to also check out their other channels if you can find them. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and maybe even TikTok could provide insight into the activities and interests of your prospects. And you can use this information as an advantage in your prospecting. Now, I am putting up a warning sign on this one, though. Some prospects may not like how much homework you've done. Let's imagine you find their Facebook profile, you reach out to your prospect, and you say something like, I saw your pictures from your trip to Fort Lauderdale from 15 years ago, and it's so interesting that you also enjoyed taking the boat out. I'm a boater myself. They could find this off-putting and think to themselves, this person has no boundaries. Regardless, make sure you're pulling out all of the relevant information as you're conducting your homework and using it to your advantage. Moving on, when it comes to worst practices, this will be a fairly straightforward slide because there's only two of them. The first is not doing your homework. By not researching your company or decision makers, you are failing to plan. And we all know what happens when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Please do not go into prospecting without having done a minute's worth of research prior to the first cold call or email. And the second is digging too deep into the information prior to making your first touch point. Doing the homework to start should only take you a couple of minutes. Anything over 3 minutes and you've dug yourself in too much of a hole and you've lost productivity. Get 1 to 3 quality facts about the company or the decision maker, insert it into your cold call conversation or cold email, and go from there. That wraps up this week's quick overview of homework, and I appreciate you checking out the video. If you want to dig deeper into homework, I'd highly recommend checking out some articles that you can easily find on Google. Some people will have similar ideas to mine, and others will differ. At the end of the day, it's up to you to craft your own homework strategy, but I hope there were some key takeaways in this video that you can begin using today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, sales doesn't need to be hard. While sales is becoming vastly more complex with metrics and data, your process doesn't need to be so convoluted that it isn't easily replicated. Keep coming back to the channel to learn more about how to simplify your process and win new business. And feel free to email me at sundaysalesstaples@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram at sundaysalesstaples. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next week.